philosophical tool we've ever made. You know, that's a pretty bold claim. We've made a lot of tools over the years, but I'm hoping to show you that this is actually true, and not only why it's true, but how you can use it for your advantage. Before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Arturo did a great job of thanking them earlier, but again, shout out to UT for letting us use this beautiful space. And with that, let's get started. So right now, my claim is that we're building AI shallowly. Everyone is focused on the output. Faster drafts, better code, smarter recommendations, automating anything you possibly can. No one's thinking of the intention, or specifically, no one's thinking about the relationship between humans and AI. It's all about how can I use AI to replace me, not how can I use AI to augment me. We're not building for the person behind the output, we're building for the output. We're neglecting the whole journey that is creation. And with how we're currently building, what we're finding is this way of working with AI doesn't reduce work like everyone's claimed it is. It's not just, I'm going to execute or automate this and it's going to make my life easier, right? Like the initial claim was. It's now, oh, I have to build a roadmap. Now I have to do marketing's job. Now I have to go do pricing. We're just intensifying and reducing how much work we're doing. It's not leading to, oh, now I have more free time to go do what I love. It's, oh, now I have more to do in general. It's another email train, right? Like, I think we've all experienced that. We're just increasing the amount of work we're doing. We're not reducing anything. So when we're building for output, the other thing about it is that now we've been producing the output for how many years? Now, if AI can go automate that output in that workflow, we become replaceable. Now, why do we even have a human? We can just use one person, they can run all these agents, run all these workflows, and what else do we do? When we build for the person, when we build for the relationship, then it becomes augmentation. The growth behind it becomes exponential. And so instead of replacing the human, is there a way to optimize the human? And here is where you're like, Gillian, why were you talking about metacognition? Why were you bringing up a psychological term? We're at a product camp. And that's because thinking about how you think is the single biggest indicator of human performance. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it in the planning phases, which is thinking intentionally about the strategies before you start. You can do it while you're actually executing, performing. That's in-time realization of how you're executing and thinking, is this the right way to do it? And then in the end, the evaluating, which I think most of us are aware of, is this the right way to do it? Is there anything I can change? And once those little things are adjusted, what is that compounding effect? And so I have a couple examples. John Hatie is a researcher, and all the way back in 2009, almost 15 years ago, he talked about metacognition being the predictor of learning success. Not IQ, not prior knowledge, not motivation. It's, can you think about how you think, and are you able to make adjustments to learn better? We also have Ivan Gu, who I hope most of you know is one of the most decorated freestyle skiers. She's also a Stanford quantum physics and physicist, which is amazing. But she's also been on Forbes 30 Under 30, so very impressive woman. And one of my favorite videos from the Olympics was, she was asked, do you think before you speak? Which is kind of a brash thing to ask someone. It's like, oh, like, do you even think before you talk? And what she responded was one of the single most eloquent ways to describe metacognition I've ever heard. And it's the idea of, I spend a lot of time in my head, I recognize my thought processes, and then I modify how I'm thinking. And if Eileen Gu has this much success using metacognition, I think all of us here can benefit from using that in some way. And so, metacognition is great, right? Oh, great, like, you told me about this, it's the single best indicator of human performance, how can I get on this train? It's really difficult. I don't know if you've ever been in a real-time motion of doing something and stop, hey, like, thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. Pausing, being intentional about how you're thinking, and then choosing differently. And so some of the reasons are different is that it requires a very intimate knowledge of your self-awareness and of yourself. It requires you to really know yourself and simply a lot of people don't care, don't want to know themselves. They're comfortable with just acting as they are. It also requires awareness of why patterns need to change, why this current action isn't suiting you, or this current pathway doesn't serve you, or doesn't get you to your goal. And then it actually requires the motivation to make that change. It requires you saying, hey, I know this isn't serving me, I'm recognizing this pattern, and then being able to choose differently and go forward on that path. When that same pattern comes up again and again, because it's going to. It's not just one choice and it's gone. It continues throughout the duration. So, I'm going to pose to you, what if there was a system built to recognize your individual patterns and surface them in real time? What if there was something that knew you so intimately that while you were thinking out loud, it could say, hey, that's this pattern. Why don't we change that? This is going to be a better way to serve that. And that's exactly what it built. So I'm introducing a concept called the thinking arc. And it's a compounding agentic system built on your cognitive signature, which is derived on how you think, not just what you are thinking. You put in behavior artifacts, notes, drafts, outlines, any type of scheduling material that shows how you like to structure things. And what it does is it infers how you think from it, and produces a cognitive signature which compounds and actually builds a system made and tailored to how you think and what your goals are. And so, I have a very lovely demo for you today. I'm going to introduce Kelsey here. And Kelsey was one of the participants that went through my thinking arc process. And Kelsey, what was your initial impressions of the thinking arc?
It's really fascinating. You gave it some of my actually just AI conversations. You kind of summarized them and gave it. It'll go through a little bit. It was so interesting to see kind of what it could tell me about myself. And we did actually give it some feedback, which only made it better. And it's really been interesting to kind of play around with it as well.
Right, so what we ended up doing is I had Kelsey identify the 5 conversations that best exemplified how she thought, right? And she ended up pulling out one about like book recommendation. She pulled out one about a lease negotiation. What were the other couple ones you pulled out?
Kind of career advice, like work stuff. The other one.
Yeah, so it was a broad variety in different ways, and humans are so adaptive, they're so changeable. You can't just put one conversation and expect it. And so, especially, you can't ask a human how he thinks. Like, how many of you actually, like, know the thought processes and, like, how you actually, like, go through? Like, you do? You do? Okay, 2 people out of a room of 30. So, it is possible, but it's very, very difficult. And so, what we did here is we ended up putting together a list. And one thing I want to call out is this cartographer. So what the thinking arc did is develop 3 distinct personas related to Kelsey's thought patterns. And the first one is, I'm going to just read it out. The lens is structure and position. Where does this sit? What is this a part of? What is edges? Challenges on moving to action before there's enough of a map. When Kelsey comes in with a problem, this persona asks what territory it lives in before helping to solve it. Never let slides stay in I'm confused without locating confusion precisely. One question that's always asked, where does this fit into what you already understand? And so one of the things that the thinking arc noticed about Kelsey was that she likes to see the map of everything before she dives into the individual parts. And you can actually clarify more on that. What did this thinking arc surface that you felt was most relevant to the cartographer?
Yeah, I think some of the work I do, I'm kind of in a new area, and it's been hard to kind of figure out where everything sits. Like, I'm learning pieces at a time, but for me, I struggle without being able to see the whole and where it fits within that. So this felt very accurate for me.
Yeah, and when we read this, was there a conversation that we put in that most resonated with, like, the cartographer? Was there anything that, like, stuck out that you remember from those, like, 5 initial conversations?
I think it was something related to my work, and because it is a different field, and so trying to, like, especially the technical concepts, because I have some technical background, but this is a different area, and so kind of figuring out what I already know and then where it sits within that, I think it's tied to that.
And so the couple other personas we have for Kelsey are a prospective broker, which focuses on like what different angles that we have available. And this one was interesting because initially it was more of like a challenger or an adversary. It was just like almost playing devil's advocate. And we said, hey, you know, like that's not quite right. And like say, what was it, like you were like, hey, like I'm okay being challenged, but not for the challenge. For challenge's sake, like when something is like when I'm decided on something, like and I know and it's like in my gut, unless there's new information that's going to change my opinion, I think it was like I don't feel the need to like go back and re-examine and be challenged. Like once my mind is made up, is that like the correct way to phrase that?
Somewhat. I think the initial one was more like, you know, devil's advocate, like you said, but just for the sake of it, where I just don't feel that that's useful. And so that's the one we gave more feedback to, where I said that doesn't quite resonate. It's more, I don't feel the need to keep going over being challenged on something unless there's new information.
Yeah.
And then it came up with Prospective Broker, which felt much more accurate.
Yeah, and so it's a system that also adapts, and like it'll read a cognitive signature, and one of the things we made sure to implement that it didn't make any assumptions, you know? It's great to have all this and infer a bunch of things. It's like, oh, cool, this is reading me. But if it's not actually true, if it's not actually accurate, then there's still no value of it. It's still another agent that's just trying to automate something. This needs to be something that actually improves and takes it a step further behind automation, but actually surfaces patterns that are true for you and that in real time it can recognize. And so it was really great to see, in general, the process working as it was designed. So that was really encouraging when we had run through pilots. And then the last one, which was like very relevant to your work, was the technical translator. So this was the gaps in conceptual comprehension and operational fluency, right? Because Kelsey's working in a field, Kelsey's very smart, let me tell you, but she's working in a field that is very complicated and that the people she's working for have years of technical knowledge behind, and she's not able to, she's just not at that level, right? Like she doesn't have those years of experience. And so this one in particular was designed to get Kelsey to that level and to be like the kind of like the like expert encyclopedia in her pocket that like she can pull out. And this one specifically came from, I think, the AI conversation, right? She went to a Claude coding event and had a conversation in real time of or you kind of explain to me, like, explain that conversation again. You have the Claude.
Yeah, I was trying to learn, and at first I was kind of putting in information as I was getting it, so just like random bits, and then I realized as I kind of took a little time, I put in more information. I said, actually, explain all of these concepts, but also how they fit together, not just kind of at first like I was doing just one at a time. And again, it kind of goes back to almost the math for me, where it will put it all together, but also ground it in something that I already know or my knowledge.
Yeah, and so you may be thinking, okay, this is great, Gillian, but I could have come up with this myself. Do you think this is something you could have come up with on your own?
It would have been hard for me to put it all together. Like, I would like to think I could get there maybe with an individual conversation over time, but having that as the foundation for anything is much more helpful.
Yeah.
So you, if I understand correctly, you essentially created a template for
Yes.
her to input into that can then give her cognitive feedback that she can use to help manage her
So this
metacognition.
is part one of the intake form. So there is an actual agent architecture. I don't quite have time to get into all of it and what the actual system looks like, but this is the first layer. So this is the intake. So what this does is take her behavioral artifacts, analyze them, and spit out how this person thinks. From there, it actually goes into a prompt generator, which I'll show you, and that's what actually produces the system.
Okay. Is it possible to get a list of the template or the questions, your input?
So that's IP. There's definitely things that there's.
So this is actually going to be a finished product?
Eventually, yes, yep.
Can you talk about what the behavioral inputs were, just like gathering all prior conversations with AI, or was there another?
Totally. So I've done it on myself, and I ended up using drafts, notes, anything that I felt, like I use like a Substack planner because I write on Substack. It's anything that you feel like represents the best like version of your thinking. Of like when you came out of something, you're like, oh, like that's exactly what I wanted. Like that's exactly the output that I wanted there. And so with Kelsey, we ended up using Claude transcripts, and you felt like the conversation that you were having with Claude, like you came to like the best output, or you felt like it was like very understanding, and like you felt confident in the knowledge you had gained for that. And so we took those transcripts, put it into like a markdown file, and then dropped it into the configurator or the intake agent that read up those transcripts.
Quick
Yeah.
question. So what's the, practically, is this something that you think it's going to be a life coach, career coach, or all of the above? Or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm an academic at heart and a researcher, and so this is kind of like the purest version of it, but there are going to be iterations of it. And so the vision is to have the framework, the model, and if someone is like a true thinker, philosophist, academic, this is probably the version of it they can use. But yes, the goal is to have one for students, one for coaching. I was talking to my friend who's a product leader at EA, and her first reaction was like, oh, this would be amazing as a coach. Amazing as like a career coach, for example. And so having a career coach iteration. So the best way I think I can describe this is like the framework I'm going over is the technical behind the scenes before it gets specified into any individual product. So this is the foundation that everything is going to be built on, essentially.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, of course.
How big of a training draft, or how much do you need in order for it to provide the
Yeah, so that's a really great question.
100 drafts or 50?
So this was from 5 rounds. This was from 5 conversations. And Kelsey, like, did you feel like it was pretty accurate from like, obviously it's not going to be a complete model from 5 things, but did you feel like it was at least a good starting point?
Yes, because also, I mean, I ended up using AI conversations, but they were very much my natural thinking input, like I didn't filter anything, so yeah, it just showed me going back and forth into how I do things.
And that's the biggest thing, is like you need to identify ways where you didn't feel observed as how you're thinking. It needs to be a natural thought process, which is why, and that goes back to the reason why you can't put in, like you can't really ask the user how they think, right? Because like you can think, oh, I think one way, I do this, I do that, and then you actually don't, or you do it slightly differently. And so it's easier to actually just show instead of tell. And then you had a question, yeah?
2 questions.
Yeah.
So, how do you evaluate the accuracy of your findings, right?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now we're in pilot testing, and so I have doing different cohorts of people who are actually iterating the model before we bring it to market, and so that's something that I'm actually actively figuring out right now. What the success looks like at the end of it is if the user is able to think clearly and get closer, it feels like the model brings them closer to their goals. And so I'll share, I actually used the model on myself. And this was designed from something I made for myself, and I was sharing it with someone, and they're like, oh, like this is like much bigger than like just you. And what it did for me, I'm a very ideas-driven person. I have 500 ideas a minute. And so for me, it turned me from an idea person to an actual execution person. It was able to flag to me, hey, that's another idea, but where are you on X, Y, and Z? And so it was able to refocus me and identify that my pattern is thinking and not doing, and so but that's gonna be different from everyone else. Like for example, like Kelsey doesn't have an execution problem, you know, and so for her it's like more like the understanding, and so that's the beauty of this AI and the beauty of putting in your own artifacts is it's customized to each individual goals.
And second question is, how do you know or how do you assess that something is missing?
Yeah.
Right? Right? Do you have like defined set number of patterns, right? In some of the psychology schools, they have defined like 182 parameters of your brain, right? The way your brain thinks. In Strength Finder, they have like 34 different patterns of your brain, right? So, is it possible? I mean, you are identifying 10 patterns, and there are 20 patterns that are missing, and out of 20 patterns, you have pushing out, I mean, you are showcasing 3 or 5 patterns.
Yeah.
There might be other patterns which you are lacking of or which you need support of,
Yeah.
right?
That's a great question. So this is like the initial intake. So this is the baseline you're operating on. The further system actually iterates off of that baseline. And so right now, this is what, if you just logged in to your thinking arc, this is the first conversation you'd have. The actual system is built to recognize new patterns that come back and feed it back into the contextual layer, so the system compounds and builds on itself. Yeah.
First question.
Yeah.
Do you have more to present? Because everybody's asking a lot of questions.
That's a good question. So y'all, I have a little bit more. What I wanted to do quickly is I will show you how we took this cognitive signature and turned it into an actual system prompt. So this may answer some questions as well. So what we did here is we took Kelsey's cognitive signature, what we just learned, and we actually put it into an agent designed to create thinking systems. And so from here, they developed the specific personas, and I'll show the cartographer because that was the one we touched on. And this is how the system would actually operate with the user. So it derived that it was from gap 1, which is the insight to updated model, and the decision pattern would be the orient movement before, or orient decision before movement. And so this is challenges for Kelsey to move to resolution before the problem is positioned, right? Before she understands all of that information, can she confer what the solution is? Like, you're never gonna have all the data points you possibly want to make a decision. This system pushes Kelsey to, make a decision before she feels 100% confident, because you're never gonna be 100% confident. Right? And so, Kelsey, you're nodding your head. Do you have experience with that in particular?
All the time. I definitely prefer to have a clear, in-depth knowledge before I make a decision, but sometimes a lot of times you don't have everything, or you may not be able to, and so I do need to get better at that.
Yeah, and so, and that's a different part of the system. But the system is designed, you also have the perspective broker, you have the technical translator, and then the opening question in particular, what are you trying to get a clearer picture of and where are you coming in from? So it orients her in a way that is designed around how she thinks. This is essentially defining what success looks like in Kelsey's brain. If she can walk away with a clear mental model of what is going on, that would be success. Yeah.
As part of this process, is it inputted into your prompts, what have you, or the system delivers what a key objective or an end goal is looking like? Isn't that not really the ultimate?
Yeah, so we're working on that. It's part of the system. There is something we call a decision layer, which is the layer.
Decision tree, maybe.
Yeah, and so the decision layer essentially identifies the patterns that the user engages with. At the end of a conversation or an output, it'll always ask you a question, right?
Okay.
It gets very specific on what that question is, and it's tailored exactly to where Kelsey's goals are. So for mine, because mine is calibrated already, it's what artifact needs to be produced. And so for me, driving to, again, that execution, it's what would the world's best employee do for that information? I'm a founder, and so I'm my own employee. What would my world's best employee that works for me, what would it do? What should my next move be? And then the last one I think is most powerful is what is implicit. And so I love the why behind things. And so if I'm having all these insights, what am I missing? What's the why behind it? And so that decision layer is calibrated after 15 conversations with the system. We came to 15 because it's based off of single participant research design. And so working with researchers to validate the model in and of itself, I recognized pretty early on that I'm a product person. I design products, I'm not a researcher. I have some market research experience, but this is much more psychological than I have experience for. So I've been working for researchers to validate the mental model actually holds up. And then I know we're getting close to time, so I'm just gonna wrap up quickly. And then obviously if you have questions, want to talk more, I'll be around all day, come find me. I love this stuff. I'm happy to talk about it more. So I know it works because it's the reason I'm standing in front of you today. I built this model on myself, and it honestly really started from one agent. It started from, I want a board of directors to advise me on how to build my business. And from there, I just kept solving problems that arrived. One of the first one was, I feel like I'm starting from, even though I had an agent designed for a specific prompt, I feel like I'm having to restate context. And so I actually built something similar. If you're familiar with Carpathia and his LLM wiki that he just put out, I believe a few weeks ago, it's a very similar personalized application where it'll eventually be automated, but you copy and paste a prompt that has all the context the agent needs. And then once the session is closed, it spits out a summary with the relevant context to feed back into the system. And so the system's actually learning and compounding as you use it and feeding more context into what your patterns are, what you're working on, and calibrating the idea of like where you should move next. And so I talked a little bit about my patterns and what changed for me. And I'll just conclude as every other tool is focused on the output. But I'm trying to optimize the human and optimize the systems and the person behind it. And then, if this resonates for you, I have more details here. Feel free to scan. I'm also launching a small founding cohort and pilot group. So if you're interested in that, want to use it in your own work, happy to talk more. And then, to conclude, AI is the most philosophical tool we've ever made. Because it asks, what does it mean to think? And what possibilities unlock when we build infrastructure. Thanks so much.